Hi, Lawrence LeBrocq, managing partner of Garces, Grabler, and LeBrocq, here on Victim to Victory, Tragedy to Triumph. Today my guest is Chris Carlin, the voice of Rutgers football, but so much more. So Chris, how are you?
I'm great, Lawrence. Thanks so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. So let's take it from the beginning. What made you want to become a play-by-play guy, a broadcaster? Where did that come from?
You know, it's funny. I went to college thinking I wanted to be a lawyer. That was the plan.
You made the right choice.
Yeah, well, debatable, but I come from a pretty big family, Irish Catholic family in North Jersey, and I was youngest of 6. But I was always a huge sports fan growing up, but I never thought that this was a career that I could even remotely pursue. And so I went to college in upstate New York, in central New York, at a school called Hobart College. It's Hobart and William Smith Colleges. Small Division III school, not known for any kind of a program, but a liberal arts school, something that I thought would be good in kind of leading me towards law school. 2 older brothers who were attorneys, and seemed like a good way to go. And then I took a political science class, which was kind of the first step toward it, and I said, yeah, they want me to work. I'm not interested in that. It didn't seem like the greatest idea at the time. And then coincidentally, right around the same time, I had a friend who lived on my floor my freshman year. And he came up to me and he said, you're interested in sports, right? You're a big fan? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Football? Yeah, a good amount. So this guy's name was Josh Lytle. I'll never forget him. And he says, the guy who was the color commentator on the football broadcasts on the student radio station had gotten in a bar fight the night before. He had been a former player, he had just been drunk at this bar, completely obnoxious, and somebody decided they had kind of had enough. And they went up behind him as he's standing at the bar, and they pantsed him. They pulled his pants down. And he turns around and just swings, and he hits an off-duty police officer. Oh. So that's not bad luck, that's just dumb luck. Yes. So needless to say, he was asked to not return to the broadcast, okay. And they needed somebody pretty quickly, and I stepped in, as it turned out, as a sideline reporter, and just fell in love with it. It just immediately was, is this something I could do? And ever since that moment, I was fixated on it and never even considered doing anything else. So thanks to a drunk guy with no pants, I have a career which seems somewhat fitting.
It's an unusual start, but a good one for you.
Yeah.
So you go from just going in as a color commentator on a football game, pretty much cold, because you had no warm-up for that. You were going in the next day. So how did it progress? What's the next step? Now you fell in love with it instantly, huh?
I really did. I really did. And it was funny because it was a small school, and only a couple of people were really interested in doing it. It wasn't anything that had a program for it, just a student radio station. So I was getting these chances to really try doing any game, basketball, football, soccer, all of it. And there was nobody else that was really all that interested in it. But they wanted to carry these games. So I just kept doing it. And at one point I thought, all right, do I want to transfer to a school that is kind of more centered around that? And I would have to go and stand in line behind a bunch of other guys who were already there, as opposed to just kind of learning on the job. And so I just started doing the games, and that's what I did. And I learned by doing the games and by every chance I got of listening on television and on radio to announcers, just trying to pick up as much as I could.
All right, so you started, your first game was color commentator.
It was sideline. It was sideline first, okay. Yeah.
And then color commentator. Mm-hmm. Now, when did you start doing play-by-play? Because that's in my opinion, a much more difficult animal to tackle.
It was. I would say later that spring, I started doing some for some women's lacrosse, but really the next fall for football was kind of when that really started. And it was insane. I mean, you just feel in the moment like you are trying to catch up. The game is moving so fast, and your job on the radio is to be the listener's eyes and ears, so to speak, of what's going on. And I really had no idea what I was doing. I was just trying to kind of follow those examples I talked about. But I still, even though like I felt terrible after those first few broadcasts, like, God, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm terrible. But there was never like, I'm going to stop, or maybe I shouldn't do this. It was, well, we'll learn, we'll get better, we'll do the next one, and we'll see what happens. And that was kind of my plan. And it was just doing as many different games as I could.
Now, this is in college.
Yep.
So you graduate college. Did you graduate college?
I did.
Okay.
I did. A couple of summers I worked in minor league baseball, doing minor league baseball games in the New York Penn League, which is where like the Brooklyn Cyclones were for the longest time. But yeah, that was kind of, I did those for 2 or 3 summers, yeah.
All right. So then out of college, how do you get your first break?
Yeah, it didn't come easily. The spring of my senior year, not an exaggeration, I sent out exactly 100 resumes and demo tapes, just across the universities and mid-level schools and radio stations, and I did not get one interview.
Really?
I got a couple of notes. I got one phone call just acknowledging that they had received my stuff, but I did not get one interview out of all of it. In the midst of this, I did apply for an internship at WFAN. And it had been, like everybody else in the tri-state area who's a sports fan, the place where I had just listened. I had, worked for a drugstore and delivered all day and listened to sports radio. And I got this internship. I paid a local college in Pennsylvania $500 so I could get credit for it and do it that fall. I just started learning there by how to edit tape and how to do all the little things that you had to do as an intern, getting coffee, getting people's meals, all that stuff. Whatever you had to do. I was just absolutely thrilled to be there. I kept my mouth shut. I didn't say 5 words to anybody other than, what else do I need to do?
Right.
And
then back in those days, were they the flagship for the Yankees?
They were the flagship for the Mets for a long time.
Okay.
They were the flagship for the Giants. They had just started with that. They were the flagship for the Jets as well. It was really the heyday. It was 1995. And Mike and Chris had been on the air together. Mike and the Mad Dog had been on the air together for, 6, 7, 8 years by that point. And they were obviously huge, and Imus was huge. It was, to me, those guys were superstars. And, just getting to be around it, like I can remember being very nervous when either Mike or Chris were like in the newsroom there, and I was like, ugh, God, don't say anything. Don't try to impress anybody.
So what did you learn from them? Or what did you learn from that experience?
The best thing that I learned from that experience was eliminating the word no from my vocabulary. And what I mean by that is, at the end of that internship, it was only 3 months, I said to my boss there, Eric Spitz, just went in and said, I really would like to work here. How do I do that? I didn't have a job. And he just said, okay, well, we can try you out part-time editing tape. My first day was working New Year's Day. It was a holiday, nobody wanted to work it.
Sure.
But when I say eliminating the word no, every opportunity that I got was because somebody called in sick, was because it was a holiday, whatever. Christmas Day, Thanksgiving Day, all of those days, they needed people to work, and I always said yes. I always said yes. Because my feeling at the time was, I am not going to not get this or not get somewhere out of a lack of effort and out of a lack of reliability. And it's not a self-taught lesson per se. It was just an obvious thing, but it's the number one thing I tell anybody trying to get into the business today is the second, when your bosses realize they can rely on you, they will do anything for you. If you're their guy, if you'll show up, if they know in a pinch, I call him, he shows up, that's the guy I can rely on. And that's how I got opportunities.
And that works in any business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I tell anybody in that business, if you have your heart set on something, then you have to do that and be willing to sacrifice those kinds of things. I could still remember leaving Christmas dinner to go in and run the radio station board just to run a couple of commercials for the Hula Bowl. Like nobody's listening to the Hula Bowl on WFAN on Christmas Day, but they needed somebody.
So tell me then, you're with WFAN.
Yeah.
Do you ever progress with them, or do you leave?
No, I progressed with them. I was very fortunate. I kept working as many times as they would give me, and as you would think, I became more of a reliable part-timer for a long time. And I still thought I wanted to be on the air, So I finally had been applying at a small radio station in Rockland County, New York, right over the border with New Jersey, WRKL. And they needed a sports anchor in the morning, but it took them 6 months to hire anybody. So finally, I got the job, and it paid $20,000 a year. So I was getting up at 4 a.m. and driving up to Rockland County to do all of the, to do the sportscast in the morning. And then at night, I would work part-time at FAN at least 3-4 nights a week. And I ended up just sleeping on an air mattress at that small radio station that really the only reason anybody ever listened was school closings. Yeah. But yeah, I was doing both of those jobs to when I finally got an opportunity at a full-time job at WFAN.
And then what job did you get?
It was the assistant producer for the Mike and the Mad Dog show, which was absolutely insane to me that I was going to be working on that show, the show that I had grown up listening to. I didn't know either of those guys at all, but I was 24 years old, and 6 months later became the producer of that show, the show that had only had one producer in 8 years, and I was producing that show at 24 years old because the other producer had decided he wanted to make some actual money. But yeah, it was insane for me to be in that position.
So explain to me, what does a producer do for the Mike and Mad Dog show?
You name it, whatever needs to be done, from getting the guys lunch to making sure that we have guests booked. That was my primary concern, to screening phone calls. Mike and Chris really always knew what they wanted to talk about, so I didn't have to full-on kind of outline topics for the show or things like that. But you always threw out ideas. You always talked about all those kinds of things. But really, a lot of it was logistics. A lot of it was when we travel, having everything buttoned up. The rental car, the hotel, all this stuff, making sure that we are locked in on everything and everywhere we need to be and all of that. And so it was everything just to make sure that they were both happy and they were both ready to go for the show.
So you got to learn a lot about radio working with them.
Oh, my Lord. Just understanding what they were doing every day and how much was behind it. So much of it was just Mike and Chris being themselves, and that's what connected with people. That is the one thing that I don't think I've ever been able to truly get across to people is, there were so many people back in the day who thought it was an act, and it was not. This is just who these two guys are. Right. But understanding there was a thought process behind what they were doing too, to really hook in the listener as well. It was a masterclass.
So it's a long way from producing a show to being a play-by-play announcer.
Yeah.
So what was the next step? You weren't with Mike and Mad Dog forever, so
no.
What happens next?
So in the summer of 2000, I had applied to get a play-by-play job at Bucknell University in Pennsylvania. And it was play-by-play and it was sales. You had to sell all the advertising for the broadcast. And I had never done that before. But I had connections at this school. One of my mentors had worked with me there through that minor league baseball. And I thought like I was going to get that job. And I did not get that job. And I was absolutely crushed. And I thought, if I can't get this job in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, am I ever going to be able to do this on the air? Well, A year later, Rutgers hired Greg Schiano as their new head coach, and they cleared out their radio team. And they were looking for a new crew. And they hired Tom McCarthy, who does the Phillies on TV now, in addition to NFL and college basketball, and you name it, and Tommy does it. He's amazing. They hired Tim Pernetti, who would eventually be their athletic director and is now the commissioner at the American Athletic Conference. Right. And they hired me to do the sideline. And so the three of us worked together. I didn't get the play-by-play job, and I was a little bummed out, but why not? We'll try it. And 3 years later, Tom left, and Rutgers gave me the job. So big believer in things work out for a reason.
So how many years was it from when you graduated college before you got your first play-by-play job with Rutgers?
6 years.
So 6 years.
Yeah, until I got my first play-by-play job with Rutgers, 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah, really, it was 2004, and I graduated in the spring of '95, so almost 9 years. Yeah, till I got my first play-by-play job, and in the meantime had gotten a couple of opportunities at Fan to be on the air, but they hated me. They didn't think I was very good because I was always too worried about not looking foolish on the air, making sure I knew every fact and figure and all that stuff.
Well, that helps when you're a play-by-play guy.
Sure.
And I've actually seen you in the booth, and you know everything that's going on. It's amazing to know all the players, especially in college when you have such a large roster and other teams coming in. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. Whenever I describe it, it's a lot like homework. That's really all it is. It's just doing a lot of work during the week, especially in college football, when you are dealing with, 70 players per team, and you're trying to make sure that you have information on all of them, 70 players who may play, because the second that you don't, you know that you'll need something. And I probably use 5% of my notes every week in the game, but you have to be there and be prepared.
And now you've been doing that over 20 years
yeah,
now, right?
Just finished my 21st year doing it.
So as the play-by-play guy for Rutgers, how did that transition into other work?
Yeah. It was just kind of a way to prove that I could do it. I think so many times somebody has to believe in you first to get you that opportunity, and then maybe some other people will start to respond to that. And that's kind of what happened. At WFAN, Rutgers had hired me to do the play-by-play, and then turns out during the summer, Bob Papa, who does the Giants games, was going to miss a couple of the preseason games, or he was working the Olympics, and he was working on the TV side, and recommended me to do it, and they gave me a chance to do it because Rutgers had hired me. And to me, preseason Giants, it's NFL. I'm like, holy cow. Yeah, I was blown away by the opportunity to get to do that. But that's kind of how it worked, is once somebody believed in you, then others would kind of follow. So you just need that first person to really say, okay, you're our guy here.
But the key to that, from what you said, was it's an 8-year path.
Yes.
Of never saying no.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to work on Christmas? Yes, I'm available. You want
Absolutely.
to work Thanksgiving? Yes. You want to go here and work? Yes.
And that happened with talk shows at WFAN too. It was the same thing. It was, we'll give you a couple opportunities. As I said, they didn't like me very much at first, but summertime, overnights. You want to work these shifts? Yeah. I'll show up. I'll be there. I'll learn how to do it. And it was funny. One time, I would say probably in 2002, I had probably done 10 or 15 talk shows. And I thought, they don't like me. This is not working. Maybe this is not going to be my thing. Okay. And I was going in to do a show on a summer afternoon where I was literally just coming off vacation. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to go in and have fun with the callers and goof around, and it's the worst that can happen at this point. And the next day, my boss called me into the office. He said, that's what I want. Just Just go and be yourself. And I know everybody thinks about that phrase and they think it's so trite, be yourself. But I'm a goofy guy. I like to have fun. I really do. I just, so I kind of make fun of myself. I make fun of the callers. And for whatever reason, that connected and that translated. So that's what I've always kind of lived by is like, all right, I'm not going to worry about if I know the third string quarterback for the Chargers today, But at the same time, I can make you chuckle a little bit, and I'll have fun with that. And that's what kind of connected me, and they started to believe in me.
Well, that's interesting because you said you were basically failed 14 times with different talk shows.
Oh, yeah.
And then you just decided to be yourself.
Yep.
And that really resonates because even as trial lawyers, I try to tell everybody, I want to be like you because you're so... No, you have to be yourself. You have to really be yourself because you can't sell someone else.
Sure.
You have to be you because people are going to see right through that. So it's great that you finally had either the confidence or the just I don't give a shit attitude when you.
That's really what it was. This is not going to work. So what the hell? Let's let it fly and see. But at the same time, like I know, like I hate the fact because whenever you hear somebody say it, you just think, oh, what does that mean? No, it literally means just go and whatever you're doing. If you don't interject some of yourself in it, I think you're really shortchanging the opportunity, no matter what the job is or what the situation is. And I've kind of lived by this in working in radio and in television all along. And my mantra has always been, if you let me be a little bit of an idiot, we're going to be fine. And people have bought into that, and that's kind of how I've been able to be successful.
Well, that's great. Well, you just mentioned radio and television. Has to be a big difference between the two.
Oh, my God, yeah.
So please tell us a little bit about that.
I got approached in 2008 by SNY, the Mets television network, about potentially working there full time. And it was not something I had ever remotely considered. I had just started doing a nightly sports debate show with Adam Shine called Loudmouths, appropriately enough. And we would debate 6 o'clock every night for a half hour, all the New York sports topics. And, it was great. It was fun. But I never thought of TV as any kind of a route for me. Didn't have any training in it, really. I know people would look at me and say, obviously you were meant for television. But at the same time, it was never something that I really considered. And I was kind of blown away when they gave me an audition to host a sports night segment, which is like a sports highlight show. And they also wanted me to audition doing a Mets pre and post game show segment. And I just thought, all right, well, if this turns into a full-time job, they'll want me to be able to kind of do everything. Right. And I did really well with the audition. And the next day they offered me the Mets pre and post game show. And I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. Really? Okay, I need to figure this out. And I took a chance at it. I took a swing, and it worked out. I got to do it for 5 years.
That's great.
Yeah, it was. I will never forget opening day of my first year, and it was the first year of Citi Field, 2009. Yep. And we are on a stage outside Citi Field. When I say we, it's myself, it's my co-host Bob Ojeda, the former Met pitcher, Darryl Strawberry, Keith Hernandez, Ron Darling, and Gary Cohen.
Jeez.
And I just remember taking a beat for a second, about 20 seconds before air, and looking over at these guys and saying, what the hell am I doing here? This is what just happened, But for whatever reason, it worked out well, and it was incredible to do that show for 5 years.
And so take us now. Next step. Now we're at about 2014, 2015.
So we're at my last Mets year was 2013. 2014 and 2015, I hosted Sports Night on the network. I was looking for a little bit of a different challenge. And again, I'm the guy that wants to have a little more fun. And I probably didn't incorporate that enough with the Mets stuff because I always felt like it was a very serious thing. But on Sports Night, I just, you'd watch the SportsCenter anchors doing their shtick, and you'd try to, all right, let me see if I can take my stamp and take it a step further. And I did that for a couple of years, and it was great. But something was kind of missing for me. And I think the main thing was I had enjoyed radio so much that I had this innate need for you to know what I think. And I don't know why that is. Sure, there's a massive ego to it, I'm sure, but for whatever reason, I just enjoyed giving my opinions on things. And radio really gave you the option of, gave you the time to get into it. And an opportunity opened up in 2016 at WIP in Philadelphia. And I was always a New York, Northern New Jersey guy. But this was interesting to me because WIP was just known for being a great sports radio station. And it had been a little bit down in terms of their ratings and such. And I was approached, or I pursued it, and they seemed interested. And I will never forget having a meeting with a guy by the name of Spike Eskin, who was the program director there. He later would become PD at WFAN, and he now ironically hosts the show that I was doing, an afternoon drive. And I've never walked out of a meeting before with somebody that was 2 hours long and said, I have to work for that guy. Really? Yeah, it was the way his mind worked, and everything that we were kind of vibing on really just worked. And I ended up co-hosting in Philadelphia. This Northern New Jersey guy, I don't know if you know this, Philly hates the Giants.
They do, they hate the Giants. You don't wear a Giants jersey
No,
to
you
that
don't.
stadium.
No, you do not. But I went in and I just decided I am going to immerse myself in Philadelphia. And I went to Phillies games with fans. I tried to do whatever I could to really get involved and understand the city, because I had the same opinion of the city or impression of the city as everybody else did in North Jersey, of like, oh, they're dopes down there, they don't know what they're doing. But then you get into it, and I really grew a massive appreciation for Philadelphia. And I was there for a year. I had planned on taking that job and being there potentially for the rest of my career. I would have been totally happy if that happened. But WFAN called, and the opportunity was there to replace Mike Francesa when he was retiring. And it was myself and Bart Scott and Maggie Gray, and I had to take the chance because I didn't know if that call was going to come again.
Right. Again, not saying no.
No.
Every time a door opens up, you were walking through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, you get the call from WFAN, you take over where Mike and Mike left off, or Mike and a Mad Dog left off, because we had another station with a Mike and a Mike show as well. How long did you stay in that program?
It was the first, I would say it was really the first left hook I took to the chin of my career. 3 months in, we were getting criticized quite a bit. It's a new show. Everybody's used to Mike Francesa. And then the corporate world hit me for the first time, in that I had been hired initially by CBS Radio, who owned WFAN, and I knew all the people there, and they had merged with this company called Entercom to become Odyssey. And so I had new bosses, people I didn't really know. Right. And that one of them, who owned the company, said, you know what, I'm sorry, Mike's gone. I want to be in business with him. And so Mike came back. And so they bumped us, I'm under contract here. Right. They bumped us to earlier in the day for 2 hours. 3 people doing a 2-hour show earlier in the day. So there are now 4 shows between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. From a financial standpoint, that doesn't work. And so 3 months into the job on a 2-year contract, I knew I'm toast here. Right. They're not gonna pay me what they're paying me to keep doing this. And unfortunately, that's what happened. A year later, in 2019, we went, and Bart and Maggie and myself did those 2 hours, and we were getting terrific ratings after we got bumped. Again, it was one ratings period that we got, and we lost to Michael Kay by 1/10 of a point. So we still joke. He and I still joke about that to this day. But yeah, we got finished in the top 3 our next 4 ratings periods. So, like, the proof was there that the show worked, but financially they just weren't going to do it, and I was the easiest to get rid of. So they cut me loose, didn't renew my contract, and even though I knew it was coming, it was a shock. Sure. The good news was that a guy by the name of Tim McCarthy, the day that I got fired, the day which is just the lowest day of your life, sure. Or one of them.
Especially because you've been involved in the business for so long.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like, I had been very fortunate. I had not really taken any big lumps. There were opportunities I didn't get, but nothing like this. And Tim McCarthy ran ESPN New York, and within minutes of finding out that I got cut loose, my phone rang, and he just said, "When can you start?" And I just, I was blown away by that. It was still a very tough transition because a lot of things were getting worked out, and I worked a night shift after that, which my ego is like, why am I working at nights? I'm a daytime guy. I'm a primetime guy, But you learn a lot about yourself, and I think it made me better, no question. But yeah, it was a challenging couple of years there, and I know people will think, what are you doing? You're talking about sports. Listen, your job is to connect with the audience. And there are some times when you don't connect with the audience. And it's not because you're not trying. I will need to figure out, how is what I am doing going to say to somebody, either A, I'm not turning the channel, or B, you know what, I got to talk to this idiot. I got to dial up and call him, right? Because that's ultimately how I knew whatever I was doing, I was connecting with people, sure. That they had a reaction to it. I would never be the person who would do and say something to just get a reaction if I didn't believe it. But it was hard. Like, there were nights, I'm talking to myself here, So it was a real challenge. And then, and not only that, I started, and 3 months into the job, COVID hits. Oh, we don't have sports now. Yeah. But I still have a show to do every night. So you got to get creative and figure out what to do.
What the heck did you talk about during that time?
You know what I did? I decided, and this is where my kind of upbringing with Mike and Chris came from. I decided I'm gonna take time here, and I'm gonna, as a producer, kind of in my blood, so to speak. I'm gonna book guests, but I'm gonna book guests, if I can, that are based solely on one moment in time or one particular event, and talk to them about that. Right. And so I went to work, and I called a friend at the Rangers, and I wanted to get Wayne Gretzky on, and I wanted to talk to him about just the day he retired as a Ranger and what that whole day was like. Because I remember it in 1999, and it was incredible. And at first, like, I got back he's not going to do that. And I had to call back later, and it was, listen, Wayne's son heard about it, talked to him about it, and said, "Dad, people need this now." Wayne Gretzky came on and talked to me for 45 minutes about the day he retired. Wow. And it was incredible. And I did a kind of a series that way. I tried to book a guest every day, and it didn't have to be somebody astronomically famous like that, but an interesting time in New York sports that would connect with people and allow them to remember good times. And yeah, it really worked out well, but that was the big one. That was
Wayne Gretzky, for all his accomplishments, I've met him, is a very humble guy.
He is a much better person than he was as a hockey player, and he is the greatest hockey player I have ever seen. Yeah. It is incredible how normal he is. Right? It is nuts. And I I know we can sit here, oh, we've met him, whatever. No, I'm telling you, like if you ever saw him and he would talk to you for 5 minutes, and he would make sure that not only did you have that moment with Wayne Gretzky, because he understood who he was, but the humility was incredible.
Especially, not only his accomplishments, married to a beautiful actress,
Yep.
superstar herself, and to be so grounded, it's incredible.
Yeah, and you look at the success. His daughter is married to Dustin Johnson, the golfer. I mean, you know, and yet still just an incredible, he just views himself as a kid from Canada.
All right, so let's talk about what you're doing now.
Yeah. So I'm at ESPN Radio now. I work at ESPN New York. I, for a couple of years, did some national shows at ESPN Radio. But I'm back working with Bart Scott. And I had forgotten how fun that was. Okay. And Bart's the former Jet linebacker who's he can say anything at any moment. And I'd forgotten about that too. and so you know we're back working together here for a few weeks now, and I'm having a lot of fun. It's great. But the other thing that ESPN has afforded me is chances to do more play-by-play of NFL games, college football and bowl games. Getting to do I did an NBA game last year, some college basketball games, like nationally. That has really been unbelievable for me to get to experience that and get to do some really big games that you'd only ever really dream, in my case, of getting to do.
Right. So your career has really exploded. Now you're on the whole national scene, but yet you stay with your roots, and you're still with Rutgers football.
I am.
And your color person with that is Eric LeGrand.
Yep.
So how is it working with Eric LeGrand? Because whenever I think I'm having a bad day,
yeah,
I think about Eric LeGrand. And you know, he's been on the podcast, and I've met Eric many times. And just to find out what he goes through on a daily basis just to get ready in the morning is just incredible. That 2.5, 3 hours that it takes just to get him bathed and dressed and up and ready to go is incredible. So how is it working with him?
I don't know that I'll ever be able to truly put it into words. I'm very fortunate to work with him, and I think a lot of people think the same way you do. You want to have a bad day, you want to feel sorry for yourself. I think about that guy, and every time I see him, has a smile on his face.
He does.
And you know, as with anybody, there are dark moments for sure. But when I think about how he has gone out of his way to make sure this is not going to limit the life that he wants to lead, it's unbelievable. You know, when Eric was a player, I didn't know him well. I had done an interview or two with him, but I called that game the day he got hurt, and I will never forget it. And I will never forget that the next week, what that was like for that whole community and the prayers that happened the rest of that season. Eric was just an unbelievable inspiration. Again, it's another word that gets thrown around, but I've never been around somebody like him. And he makes us better by just being around, and he gives great insight on the air. But I feel fortunate to be around him any chance I get. And just in his existence, he teaches. And that's something that I don't know that people will ever fully appreciate.
We're just talking about what an inspiration Eric LeGrand is, and that's to all people. You really have to respect what he's done and his entrepreneurial spirit, even though has such a significant injury, injury, and yet he still gets out of bed every day, goes to work. He has other endeavors such as his coffee, his bourbon now, not only doing the color with Rutgers. So it's amazing. And you were saying, so how the heck did he become the color commentator for Rutgers. How did that transpire?
So, of course, he had the injury in October of 2010. And Coach Schiano came up with the idea first and started talking about it with Jason Baum, who was Coach Schiano's media right-hand person at the time. And do you think he can do this? What do you think? And I said, well, we could certainly give it a try on the pre and post game shows and see what happens there. And he took to it. He really did. And Coach asked him, and he was all for it because he loves football so much. We would get into arguments about he never wanted any of the kickoff rules to change, even though the kickoff was the play that he got hurt on. He didn't care. He loves the game so much. And so he connected right away doing pre and post game. And then a year or two later, we talked it over. You know what? Come on in the booth for the home games, and we'll make that work. And so we'll have a 3-man booth, and he's been great. Listen, he has his challenges. It's hard to be a person on the air and to project, and he has to project even more, and it's difficult sometimes. Right. But he has never missed a game because he didn't want to be there or anything like that, or because he had something else to do. The only time he's missed a game is because, and he missed, I think, maybe a quarter, was because he was getting into the Rutgers Hall of Fame and was being honored at halftime. Right. So with him, I just don't. I don't know that I'll ever fully appreciate who he is, and the person that I'm sure that he talked to you about. That I just marvel at is his mother.
She's incredible.
She's unbelievable. Karen LeGrand is one of the most remarkable people I will ever know, anybody would ever know. And she is right there with him every step of the way with this. Yes. And she is, again, the same, just so much love in her heart and so much incredible energy that she has. And just one of my favorite people on the planet.
No, I've actually met her, not only because we also were partners with him in his fight against paralysis, his Walk to Believe, but also been to his house. And she's just a wonderful, welcoming woman. Can't do enough for you. And even their dogs are sweet. Their dog's wonderful. So, it's just such a nice family.
Yes.
And we were talking about, we played in the same Pop Warner fields, and the one was a swamp, and just such a down-to-earth, wonderful family. So it's great to talk to them, and glad we could share a little bit about Eric with everybody watching the podcast. Let's talk about the future, though, of broadcasting. Where do you see it going now? We got 4K, we got digital, we have streaming. Where are we going?
It's incredible. I wish I had the answer, because if I did, I'd be plotting my career around it. Everybody's in the content business, right? Content is king. I just think it's more about, because streaming is one thing, and then we've heard about all these talks about you break off from cable and you cut the cord, and then you have streaming. You have all these streaming services that you're paying for individually, and what do you know? They're going to bundle up just like cable. Like trying to figure out where this is all headed is insane, but clearly where it continues to be headed is that you will consume your entertainment one place, and that is on your phone, and that'll be with you at all times. Not one place, but primarily that's what all of, I truly believe, content needs to be centered around. And you're seeing that now with all the streaming services and the fact that you can sit there and watch your phone and watch shows anytime you want, and watch games anytime you want. The good news for someone like me, or for anyone in the sports industry, is that sports are the one thing that you really cannot just watch anytime. Like, you want to watch the game when the game's happening. Unless guys like you and me, maybe back in the day, maybe we'd tape a game. Don't tell me. Don't tell me what happened. Right? Like, that doesn't happen very much now. So I think that's one thing that I'm I'm at the point in my career, all right, how are we going to get to the finish line here? We're going to keep doing games, hopefully, and keep doing a lot of this stuff, but you better be ready to change at any moment with whatever it is. And it kind of goes back to my original thought of not saying no. All of these different opportunities I've been afforded in my career were not things that I ever really truly considered as possible other than play-by-play. But giving things a chance by saying yes to them, that's been my biggest success. Even if they didn't work out, took a shot, took a swing, what happened? And more often than not, you'll come out of it with something. And again, trite, but you'll come out of it with a lesson, for sure.
Well, our last guest, Sean Greavy, that was on the podcast here, he wanted to know, what is it going to take to succeed? What advice do you have for the younger people that want to do broadcast? They want to be play-by-play. They want to be color. They want to be involved.
I think it's a couple of things. Number one, it's just that. You have to be willing to sacrifice a lot. I did not have much of a social life in my 20s, and it was because I showed up to do whatever I needed to do when work called. That's one, saying yes. Number two, you have to have a thick skin. If you want to be on the air, you better be ready for somebody to criticize you, because it comes in all forms now. When I started in social media, the social media didn't exist when I started. And so those first years when I was on the air, there really wasn't anything there to criticize you other than, I would read some message boards after Rutgers games, and they're all telling you how terrible you are. Why am I doing this? But when I say have a thick skin, be able to understand that and what's important to pay attention to, but also don't just respond to the people who are telling you how great you are. Those people don't help you in the grander scheme either. And what I mean by that is, if you come to me and say, hey, I would really love your opinion on my tape. Can you tell me what you think? And the first thing I always tell to young broadcasters is, okay, just be prepared. I am not going to say one good thing about this. I am going to rip this to shreds. And I am not doing it to be a jerk. I'm doing it to help you. And you better be, and I don't say it you better be ready, but I mean understand that this is the only way any of us get better. You have to be able to understand the constructive criticism and work with it, adapt to it, and get better. And that, it's funny, I would say probably about 30% of the time, or 100% of the time, they all say, yeah, absolutely, I want to know the bad stuff. Yeah. I probably, after I have listened to a tape, hear back from 30% of them who are genuinely interested in, oh, okay, I'll try that, I'll try this. The other 70, oh, I'm not great? Oh, I'm not, oh, well, I'll go to somebody else. Somebody else will tell me I'm great, But the most productive conversations I've had in my career has been getting negative feedback in that, not negative in terms of you're awful, but negative in terms of that you're not doing this right. And here's what you need to do. And I would say those two things are the biggest things. And the other thing is just, there is luck. You have to understand that. And it's a phrase that I stick to this day, even though I don't always, I keep it in my head, but I can't always personally abide by it because I'm human. Comparison is the thief of joy.
It is.
If you are thinking about, why didn't I get that opportunity when somebody else did? You're robbing yourself. You have to look at it and say, what do I need to do to get there? And if you need to ask the appropriate people about it, that's what you do. But it can't be, why am I behind that guy? It's, no, what do I need to do to get ahead? Has nothing to do with him. All has to do with me. Right. That's it. And look, you know what? There's bad luck. And there's people who just, for whatever reason, they're not going to like you. And it may hurt you in your job one day. It may happen. Shit happens. You got to deal with it. There's nothing to say that you can't feel bad about it, But you got to understand you have to move on. And there have been plenty of times where I've felt awful about opportunities I didn't get, but you have to move on.
It's great advice.
Here's the thing. It's great advice. We all have to live with it. I have to live with it, and I can't do it all the time. I'm not going to lie, but you have to do your best with it.
You do. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and I look forward to seeing you in the booth.
Oh, Lawrence, I can't wait, and hopefully I didn't bore you too much. I appreciate it.
No, not at all. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it.